welcome to you listeners. Those of you via Classic Radio 105.5, 105.9 on the FM dial. Those of you listening, once again, good morning. Those of you viewing via GBN TV, whether you're viewing Channel 7, Channel 11, Channels 20, good morning to you also. Our social media audience, good morning and welcome to another edition of To The Point. Today being Wednesday, the 28th day of February, folks. And with me this morning, my guest, Mr. Sylvan Intyre. Unusual day to have him on the program, but he's on with me this morning. Let me say good morning to you, sir, and welcome. We actually missed Monday.
We did.
We actually did miss on Monday, of course, due to the press conference that took place. And so happy to have you this morning. Happy to have you this morning. How you doing?
I am happy to be here. Good morning to everyone, viewers, listeners, followers, well-wishers, supporters, everybody. This morning, I am appearing in a different capacity.
Yes.
Not on the Safety Foundation for Roads, neither is it on disaster risk reduction.
All right.
But I think on Wednesdays is the...
Well, usually it's government Wednesdays. And we're hosting you this morning because of your background in law enforcement. So that's one of the main reasons you're on the program this morning. We have lots to talk about. We know there have been lots of recent developments on island. And I know the listening and viewing public, we look for some clarification in certain aspects of what that has been taking place. And everyone is stating different point of view, but sometimes you need to hear it from someone who may have had that professional experience and the adequate training in terms of what we've been spoken about.
Yes.
We could get that information disseminated and probably folks would have a clearer understanding of how certain situations are supposed to be dealt with.
Yes, of course.
Understand? All right.
And there are times the authorities at B cannot seem to be blowing their own trumpet. They need to sometimes have a different perspective and have someone who has the knowledge, the experience, the background to be able to weigh in on situations. That sometimes adds some balance to it, because sometimes if you are in a situation, it seems to be speaking of yourself.
Yeah.
You don't sound as credible as you should. People tend to believe that you may be covering or otherwise. But so it is always better to have a different perspective from some other expert.
I certainly agree with you on that level. Let's kick the conversation off this morning. We know recent developments in terms of youth and violence in Grenada. Some will say youth violence in Grenada is nothing new.
Right.
There's nothing new in terms of youth violence. Some will go along with the perspective of saying, times has changed. Yeah. In ways in terms of what we see in the type of violence that youngsters are getting themselves involved in these days. The different influences that they have now. If you go back, let's say 20 years, not going too far back, let's say 20 years ago, we may have had youth violence in a different state. Someone may give someone a little thump and they may forget that. You understand? Yeah, but it has taken a different turn in terms of how we see youngsters are doing things.
Yes.
Youth violence, in your understanding as someone in of course, law enforcement, give us a bit of a feel or your take in terms of when folks talk about youth violence in recent times, how it's been and how we see now.
Okay, sure. But before I actually speak specific to youth violence, I just want to be able to weigh in a little bit on the current situation that is sometimes spoken of, and that's the issue of the escaped prisoners.
Yes.
And the empathies, the sympathies, and all of the other things that goes around the conversation. What I want to say on top of the first and foremost, we want to express our heartfelt condolences to supposedly the people may be considered dead by now. So condolences well in place and empathy for those who are bereaved, the direct family who are suffering as a consequence of what may have happened. In addition to that, my expression of support and empathy to the RGPF as well, and for those who might have been directly involved when the prisoner may have escaped. Yeah. There's a situation that people sometimes overlook, that victims and other persons associated, they do go through some other traumatic conditions that they would need some psychosocial support and help as well. So sometimes the average person tend to look on one side of the picture and forget that there are other persons who are directly or indirectly affected by the situation. So the family and relatives of what we could now consider the persons who are considered missing or may likely be dead, they are going through some situation or empathy to them. In addition to that, we are going to speak about it later on.
Yes.
But there is something called pre-trial publicity.
Yeah.
And so this is why through the police press conference. There wasn't much that they could have said because the matter is a fresh and open investigation, so they are limited in how much they can say. And so it also means that members of the public and people who are learned, people who are experts and who understand legal and judicial proceedings will understand that there isn't much that you should want to say because while there might be overwhelming evidence and circumstances that you may think a person have committed an act, the presumption of innocence is still there until proven guilty. And so that aspect has to be protected. And the feeling and conditions and emotions that could be felt by people out there, one needs to be conscious and be mindful of it. And we spoke about it in one of our programs earlier on, where we had the victim of the fire, how it was treated.
Yes.
Similarly, with that condition, we want people to be mindful of the circumstances in terms of how they criticize the RGPF, how they may give accolades or praises to the RGPF, and how they do criticize the alleged perpetrators and family and relatives of the alleged perpetrators as well. So it is not, let me say it as a blanket statement, what has happened is not a reflection of Grenada.
Yeah.
The crimes and violence, whether it's youth or otherwise, happen still to be in a very minority. And so we have to be mindful of not making a situation feel or sound or look like it is out of control, out of hand, and our authorities, they are not capable of managing and handling a situation. We must commend the RGPF for the effort. I want to say openly that the RGPF officers, they are among the best and better trained in our region. And given the limited resources, technology that they have to work with, they do a tremendous job in what they do. And oftentimes, the good that they do is not well spoken of. They're not well commended for the things that they prevent, because obviously you don't see the thing that is prevented. But the few that happen, they may have gone out of sequence in some instances. Some may have not or do not represent the profession very well. But that, again, is in a minority. But we must remember that law enforcement it's an instrument, it's institution of the country, and it must be respected and it must be given all of the support. So I want to openly lend my support personally to the Commissioner of Police and his team. I understand what they're going through. They are facing the media from across the world. I can tell you a few years ago when the Canadian citizen was allegedly killed in an accident somewhere in Lansepine and the body of the person was not found, or the person was missing. I had to have been on the other end of provision of information. And so the calls from the international community, almost every media house in Canada and the United States and other places, Europe, called in and wanted to weigh in on the situation. So when you are there, you are bombarded with the interests and everything else from the international community. So it is really not an easy situation to really handle when you have the international community swooping down on you. So we want to, again, encourage the RGPF to stay focused and be the professionals, again, in this process. And as we've always said, it is not that crime and violence is out of control in Grenada, but they do raise their head, and we must make every effort to support it, collectively as professionals and collectively as citizens, and most importantly as Grenadians who love this country and want to enjoy the areas of peace and tranquility forever. Not as long as we could, but let's say forever. So I wanted to make that open statement, because what we are going to speak of in terms of youth violence and the other issues, parenting and everything else, it does have its link to the aspect of policing, crime, the detection, the prevention of crime and everything else, because there has to be a root cause. And there is a genesis of things that are committed, and we must be able to find it, not just trying to build from the middle or trying to solve from the back, but we have to look at where it came from and how we can best correct it. Right. So I hope my statement opening is well in place.
It is in place.
As we delve into specifics in terms of youth violence. And you did ask me, and I think I remember now very well, how that it generates itself, how it is positioned in Grenada, and how it affects the whole aspect of building a society. So youth violence is something that, to an extent, has been with us for some time. Yeah. It has become, in my opinion, and according to statistics, more prevalent. The crime records has shown that persons of a particular age, whether technology and instruments have made it better for us to have information, but the statistics are there to show that we do have more in terms of youth violence than we've had, as you may have said, 20 years ago. And that is something that we need to be able to balance in terms of per capita and statistics as to whether or not, if our population was at a particular size then, and if it is now, whether or not it is really happening more, it is more prevalent, or whether or not it is reported more. But according to our statistics, there's everything that says that they're happening a bit more. So then what could be the root causes of that? I want to premise statements that you hear afterward come on a biblical principle. And it goes into parenting. The scripture says that you should train up a child in the way that he should go, that when he's old, he may not depart from it. And that is a biblical statement that has social and other kinds of implication in terms of building morals and establishing families and establishing societies and so on. And so from as early as birth, and I think I mentioned some of these aspects before, that even before birth, that religious people would actually lay hands on pregnant mothers and pray for them and ensure that they get that spiritual guidance from as early as the womb. And so there are things that pop its head up with children as they grow. Yeah. And this seems to be happening earlier than they were in the past. They seems to be born with certain levels of intellectual capacity that cause them to hinge on to instruments, the gadgets, and so on. You see those children nowadays, you wonder, well, how come, did they born with a laptop in their hand, or a Kindle, or an iPad, or a phone? And you realize that they are very, very, very intellectually sound with these things and technologically very, very savvy at an early stage. The failure here that sometimes lends itself later on into youth violence and otherwise is the inability of proper parenting most of the times. And so when a child or a young person shows signs of resistance, resilience to parents, and a parent would let up and say, leave the child, he or she is young, they're going to grow it out, you are beginning to inculcate and generate a behavior that will become a criminal activity later on, or a criminal trait. Because what you need to do, that child who's unable to speak or otherwise, he or she has no way technically of communicating other than through expressions, whether verbal or through physical action. So a child may want to touch something, you pull that child hand away and the child would give you a reaction. And the child would resist you and go back. And oftentimes, parents would sometimes get fed up because I am trying to do this with a child, or they may be saying, I'm trying to get a child, and the child keep repeating that situation. If you allow that child, that infant, to build on that issue that you know you don't want the child to do, you are making that infant or that child become comfortable with that situation, and as it grows, and as it says, it becomes harder then to bend the tree when it becomes older. So you bend that tree while it is young.
Or we say something becomes a habit.
And the repeat of things, it becomes a habit. So repeat practice becomes a habit, and then it becomes a culture later on that you sometimes cannot change. So youth violence, children becoming delinquent and deviant at a particular stage, has to do a lot of time with, and I'm not saying 100%, because as people say, you make the children and you don't make them.
Well, I have a question I wanted to continue on you and ask, because folks would say, yes, I may bring up my son or daughter in the best way possible.
Yes.
But then they will come around and say, that individual have a mind of their own.
Yes, they
with all the good that I may have instilled in them, and I know there are other parents may have instilled a lot of good in their sons and daughters, and that individual, sometime in their life, maybe at a young age or even older, may turn around and become a criminal, if you're saying it in the simplest way.
Yes.
You understand?
So the psychologists would tell you, and the social scientists and activists will also tell you that a child or an infant or any person should be considered as that blank slate or that blank sheet of paper. And it's similar to that of a computer. What you input in a computer is what you would get out. Yeah. But you're very technically savvy as well.
I understand.
Yes. And similar, if you want particular habits and trait, and the records and statistics also would show that if you insist on correct, legal, socially adept and well-founded activities and practices, if you insist on that early, you're more likely to get a better results than not doing it at all. And so while yes, it is a fact that every individual is born of a mind of their own, but technically what you want to get out of that individual is what you must try to put in. Right. And oftentimes, if you leave that individual with that blank slate, or otherwise, that blank slate or sheet of paper would be written, would be filled in by the individuals themselves or by others who would influence them to have things input into the hard drive, into the memory bank, or on that piece of paper on that slate. Right. So the best mindset would be for one to not lose the courage and the ability to insist on, this is whom I want my child and my children to become. Again, our societal statistic shows that, on average, the parent who insists on particular, what we consider good moral and religious practices, you see better results. You see better families, better homes, and eventually you have better society.
But sometimes you do see a spin on it also, because there are individuals who may have grown up in the best family background.
Oh, yeah.
You go to church every Sunday.
That's and it's
even on a Wednesday.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes, sometimes the pastor's daughter, the pastor's son become drug addicts, they become criminals and so on. That does not mean that the pastor or the priest also would not trying to instill the right principles. Yeah. But again, as I said, they form their minds of their own, and they will choose their own course of action.
And their own path.
My angle on this, we must work with what the statistic shows, right. that number still is in our minority. Right. So it will say to us that if there is a particular angle that is working positively for us, why not choose it?
We drew for a break, so let's take it. We come back with you tomorrow. When we come back, I want us to pay a little, of course, attention on the parenting aspect.
Okay.
Let's put some attention to that when we come back. Stay with us, folks. Clay 105 on your dial, GBN TV. We'll take that break. We're coming right back. Stay with us.
The Planning and Development Authority of Grenada, PDA, is enforcing regulations to curb illegal, disorderly, and unauthorized development in several locations throughout the state of Grenada. The authority is concerned that structures mainly associated with vending are negatively impacting the environment, has undesirable public health and sanitation consequences, present obstructions to vehicle and pedestrian traffic, can become projectiles during adverse weather conditions, and generally affect the aesthetics of the nation. The PDA will work along with stakeholder ministries and institutions to effect the demolition, removal, and disposal of structures which fall in the category of illegal and disorderly development, commencing January 2024. In this regard, persons who vend in or occupy such illegal structures are advised to secure their personal belongings and have the structures removed ahead of the planned PDA demolition operations. These actions of the PDA have become necessary to safeguard and protect public health and the environment, ensure the safety and well-being of all citizens and visitors, discourage any future disorderly construction, and encourage compliance to regulations pertaining to physical development in the state of Grenada. This is a message from the Planning and Development Authority of Grenada.
Welcome back, listeners. Welcome back, viewers. Welcome back, Mr. McIntyre. Mr. McIntyre, before the break, I did mention I want to get into the parenting aspect of it. It's an important part in terms of the overall development of youngsters in Grenada today. Youth violence, as we started in our intro conversation. The parenting aspects, the role of parents in children's lives. We also want to talk about the concerns that are out there right now in terms of when we see youngsters getting into a certain pattern of behaviors that we see going on. The responsibilities of parents also. What do you want to say about that in terms of, the parenting aspect when it comes to the youngsters having those sort of behaviors?
There are two angles I would approach this from, and it's similar to the position that we spoke of earlier on in terms of parents. Parenting has a special role in a child's life, and every child has a particular responsibility for his or her own life. I agree. As harsh as it may sound. And there's a particular age and stage, and this is why the law gives particular ambits in terms of when there is direct parental responsibility and roles that has to be. A parent will always be a parent forever. But there are certain roles and so there are certain functions and there are certain stages when a child must be held responsible for his or her own action. But the formative stage and cognitive stage of child or children is critical, as we mentioned before, for parent molding child or children into what they want them to be. And it starts very early in the birth of the child, where a parent must not be a distant person in the life of any child. And I remember speaking about aspects of that before, where modern day seems to be parenting by virtual means, and you have remote parenting, and that in itself has lent itself to creating monsters within our environment, where children are left unattended, they are left into their own environment, they are left to speak and deal with only gadgets and instruments, and so the human relations and interaction, that is eroded. And so parents has a lot to do with channeling the minds of the individual into becoming proper human beings. We should not, and people may say, well, maybe our era, it's a different one, and we're moving into the electronic stage where electronics will probably rule or guide most of what we do. You may be able to just sit on a gadget and have everything happening around you. But in the meantime, we have to coexist with those of us who came from the other era where a lot of the physical and social interaction meant a lot to us and still has meant a lot and is meaning a lot. And we still will have to have a marry between the two and a crossover between that era and the new era. And it is sometimes difficult to imagine, GT, what the future is going to be like when we have a peek into how some of the children are embracing technology and they're ignoring even their own peers and that physical interaction.
It is worrisome.
So parenting, it's a critical element of building a society, because good parenting builds good families, and good families build good communities and good societies and eventually good country. So we speak on the aspect of ensuring that every step of the way, that not just a parent, but it takes, except we do otherwise by artificial insemination or other means, it takes two to bring an individual into being. And so oftentimes our society suffers because most of the time there's a single parent bringing up a child. And not that you may want to say to me that the female is the weaker vessel, not quite supported. But most of the time, the absence of male figures, and I heard the Minister for CARICOM Community and Ethnic Affairs during his independence speech speak of the absence of men and shouldering their roles in families. And that has a lot to do with how children are brought up. Broken homes with single parents has a greater disadvantage than a home where you have two persons as parents united in the upbringing of a child. Children who often understand that there is disparity, father and mother are not getting along well, they take it to their advantage. They play on either the mother's side or the father's side. It depends on what they would want. And
Especially
parents
who is being more to what they're
leaning towards.
Yes.
And this is why when there are persons within a family where there's differences, because human beings will have that, the position of misgivings and uncomfortable, distasteful behavior and otherwise should not be in the presence of children. When something out of anger needs to be said, the aspect of self-control must be exercised. And so children will grow and will live what they see. And they will,
hear too.
And what they hear too. Yeah. And this is why sometimes even behind the closed doors, they might be in their room someplace, and the parents might be in the living room or other place, and they might be privy to the conversations and other things that are happening that could have some kind of influence on their minds and their own upbringing. So conversations must be of such that a child must yearn of wanting to be like their parents, or wanting to be of the good things that the parents see that they should be. So one's conversation should be clean, and it should be child and children friendly. Oftentimes parents do not understand the level of conversation and interactions that they need to have. We must allow children to be children. When they they will remain children until they no longer are children.
Yes.
And there is an age within which a person is considered to be a child, an adolescent, and an adult. And children must be allowed to be children, and this is why there's laws that speak against children employment and children having access to certain things at particular stages in their life. And this is one of the disadvantages that we've seen in our society, the neglect of parents in not allowing the children to be children at a particular time. They allow them to be cooks and washers and breadwinners at too early of a stage in their life. While one may contest that you are teaching them to be responsible for the future.
But there's a time that it will become necessary for them.
It will become necessary. You're denying this child of their childhood. And so you are trending them to become who they should not be at a particular stage in their life. And we've seen a lot of time that some other things that children happen to become exposed to, it works to a disadvantage.
Especially for them and also for you as a parent. Because now they start practicing it in the public domain.
Yes.
You know, the behavior of let's say someone is stealing. Or they may have lived in a house where they know their mom or dad. For an example, dad always comes home with stuff that you know he may not have worked to obtain. And you are seen as a youngster, and the conversation is happening in the house. You understand? Not thinking, but thinking. Some parents may think, my son or daughter is not absorbing that for some reason or the other. What we speak about, I say, I went and I steal this or I steal it, and you took that. And you may say it in the household as a joke. And then it leans to where that youngster now start practicing that.
Yeah. We could generalize parenting by a particular statement. Similar to the statement that says, be the change that you'd want to be or you'd want to see.
Yeah.
Similar, be the parent that you want your child to become.
Yeah.
Do not just say, do as I say and not as I do. Because the learning process of any individual is retained more by seeing and doing than by just listening or spoken or reading. And so children will necessarily become what they think or what they understand their parent to be. And if you look generally at what happens even in our own society, any household where there's more than one child, you can bet your bottom dollar that one of these children will become what their mother or father happened to be as a professional.
Yeah, so true.
Without any direct leading from the parent to say, this is who I want you to become. Naturally, they would, as they grow, their father was a good carpenter, a good plumber. Without teaching, you'd realize, hey, that child just become even a better plumber than
the father.
Than the father was, because they would embrace technology as well as the skill and experience that they saw from their father, and they become good at it. Yeah. As well, on the other end, if the father happened to be an alcoholic, a drug addict or otherwise, you can bet your bottom dollar. If he's a thief or he's a dishonest person, you can bet your bottom dollar that someone in the family will also become a dishonest person who might be a thief as
Some
well.
folks may say it's genetic for some reason or the other.
It doesn't have to be. And so parents must drive themselves in growing their children to say, oh, this is what I want. I want my child to be the parent that I am. And if you are comfortable in your child becoming a thief later on, then continue to be a thief.
All right. Mr. Michael, let's move on a wee bit. You know, speaking on the aspect of parenting is a program we could talk about for the entire morning. You know, time doesn't permit us to spend to
and the guiding principles which we were given.
Because we are just brushing the surface of this.
Absolutely.
We just brushing the surface of
yes.
this. Let's just redirect the conversation this morning and put some attention into, you know, we heard about the incidents that occurred recently in terms of the prisoners who escaped and so forth.
Right.
There's always that procedure that the police force may have to go through, or the officers may have to go through.
Yes.
You being, of course, having the knowledge in law enforcement, you may be able to give us more information on this. Now, the procedures in terms of handling prisoners. Share some more information on that for me.
Okay.
From your knowledge base.
Oh, definitely. So, Commissioner of Police Don McKenzie, again, did articulate in his press conference that he was confident that if procedure was followed, that what happened should not have happened. He is implying in his statement that there are actually set procedures. When he joined the police service in April of 1984, like myself, we joined together. What we were told in dealing with prisoners, the serious nature of it is if a prisoner escapes, he escapes with your job.
You should be going too.
That's what we were told.
All right.
And that's the serious nature of understanding there's some principle and the serious nature of dealing with a prisoner. They said, we warned us, if a prisoner escapes from you, if he run, he's running with your job. If he's walking with your job. If you want a job, you better go find him, or better ensure that he does not escape. Having said so, there's always the good side and the bad side of things, and the side that people don't necessarily see and understand. There are actually set very written out procedure in the police, what is called the police standing orders. Yeah. So there's standing orders that gives particular guidance, and even the police regulations and our laws and principles. It's also written as to how prisoners should be handled and taken care of. But like anything else and every facet of society, there are those who often do not adhere or follow set principles as they really should. And this is why when every situation occurs, there has to be, before the act is written or before the hammer comes down, that an investigation or an inquiry into the circumstances be undertaken, and those who are found to be in breach of the law or principle must be dealt with accordingly. Yeah. And that's one of the weaknesses of our system, that there are set laws, there are set principles that's supposed to be honored. When they're not, this seems to be left without the necessary corrective measures or punitive measures assigned to them. And so when that happens, they tend to grow, and persons and individuals tend to become relaxed and lapse in the areas of responsibility because they're often not held too accountable for their actions or their inability to have executed what they should have done. So in handling prisoners, the safety factor to the individual is of paramount importance, first and foremost. So once a person is restrained, arrested, he is denied and restrained and restricted from his own privilege. So the first thing that happens, that person must be searched to ensure that he's not going to harm himself or harm others with whom he's going to be associated with. And as the process followed, there has to be the chain of custody, you call that, where he's brought in, he's been processed. If he has anything on him, they're taken from him, and it is written in his presence, documented as prisoner's property in a book within the station. When he goes into the cells and everything else, the time he goes into the cells, who takes him in, and all of that is written into the station diary. And there are periodic sections of time when prisoners need to be given particular attention. They need to be inspected. They need to be looked after in terms of their own well-being, their own safety just as well, and to ensure that escapes and other things are not taking place while they are in there.
All right.
Once that is done, every time a prisoner is visited in his cells, again, it should be written in the station diary. The supervisor needs to follow. These are some of the basic procedures that needs to be undertaken. So when an inquiry is driven into an occurrence, these are some of the things that are expected to be followed or asked during an inquiry, whether these processes are followed. And if along that chain of custody until the prisoner is brought before a magistrate or a judge and taken to the prison, that process, if it is found in breach anywhere along the line, then a person could be held liable for not adhering to the set principles that's supposed to be. And there are a number of persons involved. Yeah. There's the supervisor, whether it's a senior constable, a corporal, or a sergeant. There's somebody who's responsible, and then the person who is on diary, or the person who is assigned to looking at a particular prisoner within that time, are the persons that are likely to be questioned along the line in terms of how these things are handled.
From your experience, from your knowledge base, is there a particular timeline in terms of which prisoners are supposed to be looked upon? Or is it every 15 minutes, every 20 minutes? Is there a timeline that the person who's responsible at that particular location?
There are set times in which prisoners are supposed to be visited and they're supposed to be checked. And this is why I mentioned every time that is done,
it's supposed to be
written. In addition to that, if the supervisor or the person whose care he's entrusted figure that he may be of a particular risk or otherwise, there's absolutely nothing wrong in doing more than the usual inspection or observation in terms of there are prisoners that may be of particular mindset or record and so forth. Under those circumstances, maybe extra vigilance would be exercised or should be exercised, even if there are general principles that guide prisoners anyway. But because there would be prisoners of particular caliber based on records, you would even want to step up your game a little bit further to ensure that, first and foremost, when anybody is entrusted with a law enforcement, their safety is of paramount importance. Not necessarily them escaping, because for more than one reason, you want to ensure that as human beings, that the human rights are also observed.
Not infringed upon.
Right. In addition to that, you want to ensure that they too do not escape lawful custody to be in a position to continue the crime or to commit other crimes.
Or even in harming others.
Or even harming other persons.
In the confinement that they had also.
Yes.
All right, that's interesting to know.
And on in general, in terms of that has happened, this has not happened regularly, but it has happened throughout my 39 years of service, where prisoners escape from custody and where they even escape from the Richmond Hill prison. So it is not an occurrence that happened now, but it becomes more of a greater play because of what is alleged to have happened as a result of those
escaping. You have heard prisoners escaping, maximum security prisons around the world.
Around the world.
You understand? Around the world. I mean, of course, our situation, we're not saying that it's totally different.
Yeah.
But, we have prisoners who have escaped prisons that prisoners in Grenada, if they probably were fair, may not contemplate the idea of wanting to escape.
Yes.
Because of the nature of the security aspects of the premises where they had. You understand? So it's understandable. It's regrettable that what happened.
Yeah.
You understand? But still.
So examining an escaped prisoner situation or creating an inquiry, there are quite a number of factors that one has to be cognizant of. And first and foremost, the persons who were entrusted with those prisoners, there's a particular way that they too must be handled. Right. And the authority has to be mindful that they are human beings and they are subject to errors and mistake, or they can become negligent. Who don't make mistake and who don't become negligent at times. Yeah. Even if it's a condition that should not be tolerated and persons must be held accountable for their actions, the human dignity and other aspect of it has to be taken into consideration as to how psychologically that person is treated. It is the normal tendency when something of the nature of which has occurred happen, where all attention is on. It is very easy to forget that that individual also is a human being and he is a victim of the circumstance as it happened, even if he may be considered later on to be negligent. But if we have a situation where one person may have been involved and is under a particular condition, if we can limit others from entering into other conditions, that is something that has to be. And I'm saying this to say that persons can go into modes of depression. Their family and other people could be further affected as a result of that condition. And so the psychosocial support for the individuals who were at the station at the time, that has to be considered as well, because they would be considering, just suppose that evidence indicate that the person who escaped, they are responsible for X condition, they would feel a sense of remorse that it is as a result of my negligence or my action that might have happened. That condition could affect them psychologically, emotionally, and it could affect their families and other members of the family as well. So that condition is also very delicate, and our authorities have to be mindful as to how that matter should be treated.
All right. We due for a break once again, Mr. McIntyre. Let's take that break. When we come back, I want to get into the aspect of, community policing.
Yeah.
That particular relationship that should be developed. We want to also think about, the public perception of how police are seen.
Yeah.
Also, we want to talk about that when we come back.
Okay, great.
And we're also going to welcome some calls. I know there are folks who are listening who may have a question or two in relation to the incidents that what we are speaking of this morning, as soon as we come back after the break. Stay with us, folks.
I want you to control your anger. There's a way to feel better. That's one thing to remember. No matter where you are, you can be a star. Stop and take a deep breath and relax yourself. Take another deep breath and relax it. Eliminate violence. Rock the box, we say, yeah. GBN, we say, arts and culture living, yeah. Rock the box, we say. I'm telling you, rock the box, rock the box, rock the box, we say. I'm telling you, rock the box, rock the box, rock the box, we say. We'll be jamming here on a Thursday.
Records at the traffic department shows that a total of 1,447 accidents were reported for the year 2012, which includes 3 road fatalities. 2,946 accidents were reported for the year 2022, which includes 8 road fatalities. This is a significant increase of 100.
Welcome back, listeners. Welcome back, viewers, this morning here on To The Point. With me this morning is Mr. Sylvan McIntyre. We're talking this morning from his, of course, professional background as being in law enforcement. We have conversation that we just wrapped up a while ago, but dealing with, of course, the police procedure in terms of handling prisoners. I want to get into this other aspect of it now, community policing. I did have a particular representative from the police a couple of weeks ago. I usually entertain him every Thursday. And he was talking about, community police and how the relationship that the police should have with the community and so forth. How crucial of a factor is that in terms of the relationship that the police should have with the public, especially with situations where prisoners get escaping and so forth? How is it that, the community could be involved to minimize the process getting any further than it is?
Yeah. So my take on community policing, I could sum it up in a few words. Community policing is more than having a few police officers patrol in a community.
Yeah.
Community policing starts from a strategic point of view from the entire administration of the police force.
Yeah.
In terms of how it sets out its policy in dealing with members of the public. Even if a few police officers or as many police officers are out there within the community, it does not mean that will build a community relations. It means that the whole aspect of how policing is seen, its impartiality, its fairness, and its general dealing with members of the public will enhance its ability to solve crime and relate to members of the public. So oftentimes, if members of the public are of the perception that the police is unfair in its dealing, the ones who are sent to the communities will not be well received. So the concept and the principle of us trying to generalize community policing by having police members walking through the community, that is not community policing.
Is it recommended, though?
It is recommended that police should have on-ground more presence at community level because there are a number of advantages to that. It builds confidence. It makes people understand that police are not just about arresting and enforcing the law, but police do have heart of flesh as well. And there's the human nature in police officers that people think that they don't have.
Yeah.
And so that hand reach to members of the public brings added confidence and builds relations with members of the public. But that, as I mentioned, could be tarnished, and that could be of non-effect if the general concept and belief that by members of the public that the police are not trusted. And in some places, not Grenada for sure, I know of other societies where in general, people do not trust police officers because they involve themselves in different aspects of wrongdoing, and so they have eroded the belief and the trust that the public should have in them, so that whether they walk through the community or otherwise, people just don't believe them.
They lost that credibility with the
We are very grateful for the word credibility, that by and large, the average police officer, if not the majority, do have that. I think our force has a very high level of credibility.
Yes.
I can tell you from experience that quite a huge majority of the crimes that are able to be solved is as a result not so much of our ability to be very creative and to be detect savvy or otherwise with technology and everything else, but the savvy and the solving mechanism a lot has to do with the cooperation
of the public,
of members of the public. And that cooperation and collaboration comes about because of the warm and great relationship that has been built. And so the community policing philosophy is one that should be enhanced, one that should continue to be built, and one that should be revamped in many ways to ensure that there are more police officers with the kind of aptitude and attitude that would want people to embrace and give information and to support them in what they do as police officers. Too often, people see police officers as the people to just
come and arrest you
when something goes wrong.
Yeah,
we've gone past that bullying stage, and oftentimes, police officers themselves create that kind of image that that's who they are. Again, they are in the minority, and I'm sure that the community policing strategy of the RGPF is that of enhancing a great and better relationship with members of the public. And not so much for solving crime, but for the for the prevention of crime, that is critical in all aspects of having a very good relationship with members of the public.
All right. We do have a caller. Let's entertain the caller, see what the caller has to offer in terms of our conversation this morning. Caller, good morning. You're welcome.
Good morning to you, GT and Mr. McIntyre. Good morning to you both. I am listening with interest, and I heard, Mr. McIntyre, you said that the police officers in charge of a prisoner, so to speak, quote unquote, but must write the times in the diary when they visited the person. You know how many times they checked on them in the room. But we have had cases in the past where somebody was found hanging, somebody was found dead in a cell, and so on. My question is, who, as explainer said, who are to guard the guards? Because if I am in charge of a prisoner and I fell asleep, I would be in trouble to put that I did not look. So I would put the wrong thing in the diary, and who is to know? Who is to know that I lied? Yeah. So I'm asking my question: who are to guard the guards? What kind of accountability is there when these things happen? Because we know it has happened in the past. All right?
Yes.
Thank you, caller. Thank you so much.
And the caller is on point in terms of the question, and it is a principle that is adopted by many police forces certainly across the Caribbean now, that the aspect of who guards the guard, or who tries those who are supposed to be tried, or those who initiates trial, simply means that they advocate that there should be an independent body, or a body that consists of public servants, civil society, police officers, that persons should look into inquiries of matters that pertain to police, where certain implications or allegations are made. Most of the forces have adopted this principle where there is an independent body that sits to examine conditions surrounding police. Maybe Grenada could consider, if there isn't one, a condition or a system where there's an independent or a joint amalgamated body that looks into issues where police and other public service situations or public servant institutions are concerned.
Okay, let's entertain another caller. Caller, good morning. You're welcome.
Good morning. Yes, sir. Mr. McIntyre, I always rate you. I always give you 99% in whatever you are doing. I look at you, you somewhat been wasted, and you're still wasting your time. You should have been somewhere to educate people. When I say educate, maybe the police force, or educate those who are possible in the police force. You should have been perhaps a principal of a school organized with the police force. You're too good. I've learned. I wouldn't say I've learned. I've reshuffled my mind a lot, and I'm understanding exactly all what you are speaking about. For we to solve crime and to prevent crime, we have to educate our parents, and our parents have to educate their children. So they first have to take control of the children at the home, and do not expect the police to control them or to rule them, or somebody else outside the home to rule them. So it's the home that are responsible to some extent for all what's happening. In fact, maybe we should investigate people who make insurance. Maybe some of them might be mentally ill, to the past on the mental skill to those who are born. Or we should have a way of testing those who are born to know if they are mentally ill or they're born with defective brains. In fact, most of us might born with defective brains and people don't know, you know. Anyhow, Mr. If I had a big post for you and I had money, I would have hired you. In fact, something is now happening in Grenada, and I hear people talking about it. But it is happening. Criminal offense have been taking place with certain institutions long ago. Years gone by. Have been affected. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. Thank you so much. Let's take another caller. Caller via the WhatsApp. Good morning and welcome.
Hey, GT, good morning. How you doing?
Not too bad. Go
Mr.
ahead.
McIntyre, always a pleasure to see you, especially on a Monday. But unfortunate that you have to be in a situation today to explain to us. Anyway, Mr. McIntyre, okay, we've been hearing from the opposition and his MPs, also some of his surrogates. They're saying that we have a leadership problem with this isolated incident, which we know is an isolated incident. And also they're saying that there is a leadership problem within the RGPF and also within the administration. Do you share that same notion?
All right, thank you, caller. Let's get a response. Mr. Becker, you want to respond to that in any way?
No, my personal opinion where this is concerned, it cannot be made public. I cannot comment on saying that there is any such issues.
All right. Let's take another caller. Let's take another caller. Caller, good morning. You're welcome. Good morning.
Good morning. Let me turn down my radio fast. Yes, my brother. I tell you something, my brother. You see that what I have about there is a wonderful guy. I know him. He's supposed to know Miss Jacob. And he's supposed to know Rose Jacob too. Let me tell you something. Children have to come from a good home. The parents supposed to be good. And you know, a village long ago grew up a child. I sure I'm how they call him, you know that. A village grew up a child, let me tell you that. Long ago in my days, I have 76 years now, what telling you, in my young days, a village grew up a child. You think when you come out to school, especially when you come from school, you could be quarreling and a big person coming up, you're getting lashed before you reach home. And you don't go home and say you get lashed because you go get again. And please, you have to pray for the lady that beats all you, that beat us, to go home and tell we pray and because you go get more licks. It's according to how those children grow up. And you see these children are running now, forget that. You see this voice, this tablet and thing they are giving them to little children. They're watching a lot of ugly thing on it. So they, oh my God, my darling police officer, I give you 100% good, and I'm praying for you all every day. I'm praying, especially the David boys.
All right, Ms. Jacob, thank you so much. We are a bit strapped for time. We may have to steal an extra 5 minutes on the show this morning. Thank you so much. Let's take another caller. Caller, good morning. You're welcome. Caller via WhatsApp. Go right ahead.
Good morning, GT. Mr. McIntyre, I just want to ask you two questions, please. When someone escapes from a cell in the custody of the police, do the police log the ways and means how they escape so they have it as future reference so they can point out to other police officers throughout? They may say, well, this is how this prisoner escaped, so then you need to take note of the fact as such. More than once, I always hear prisoners say they want to pass urine as such, and then they escape. So it's not a first-time occurrence. What do we have? Do we log in? Secondly, I have heard of situation where people look at locks, they pick locks, and they escape. Do the police have a diary? What is the serial number on a lock? When they place a lock on a cell, they're supposed to have the serial number, the type of lock, the ways and means of these locks can be opened. In short, what I'm saying, there are a lot of basic things that police need to be trained about, and information logging in the diary so they could always look back and
All right, caller, thank you. I think we may have lost the caller there for some reason. Do you have so back in response to the caller, or we entertain another?
In no way would I want to disregard the level of training that our police force in Grenada. I know we are trained, they are trained among the best the Caribbean do have. As a matter of fact, our police officers have gone regionally, internationally, and have done well. And they are fully and well set principles and ordinances that police officers are guided by. However, police officers have been, are, and will continue to be human beings who are subject to different kinds of failures, different kinds of circumstances than anybody else. The other side of that is that when failures or breaches do occur, as the caller is indicating, what is being done about it, that would make the difference as to whether lessons learned were well documented and corrective measures have been placed. I know for sure that every situation, every condition that occurs, they are documenting processes, and there are case analysis, and there are corrective measures that are assigned to everything else. But as an entity like anywhere else, there are hundreds and thousands of people who traverse and move through systems, and each and everyone do have a different attitude and a different approach to condition and situation, regardless of what their professional training and experience might have been.
All right, let's entertain another caller. Caller, good morning, you're welcome. Caller,
good morning. And good morning to Mr. McIntyre. Now, we have a wave of violence that, took place in the country. Most of the callers elaborate on, how to bring up a child. But my substance this morning is, what is it? Well, I noticed a trend in the issuing of firearms to some young people in this country that claim they have businesses or they're running business. My question is the firearm restricted? I don't know if I'm using it right, but is the firearm for the business or for the person to be carrying that firearm? Or Donnie come along, wherever they go online, they go with the firearm and dead. I want to know what is the RGPF take on that, and the issuing of the license, and where the firearm supposed to be. Because not only these illegal guns committing crime in Grenada, they have local businessmen, well, I shouldn't say women, that have licensed firearms. They hear something about the individual, man and woman relationship, they take the firearm and go on threatening people with it. I want to know if that is right. So, and other than that, does the RGPF do checks and balances to people that have licensed firearms to check how much ammunition was issued, how much bullets were issued, if they still have that amount? Just, I don't know if you can elaborate on it. There's no request for that. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. And that will be our final caller for the morning, Mr.
Yes.
Mike. We are due to wrap. In response to the caller?
This reiterates the need for, again, the police to have greater platform in terms of opportunities to share information with members of the public. With regards to the use and issuing of firearms, one of the basic conditions to justify for the use of a firearm would be for the protection of life and property. That's a general condition. Yeah. A vetting process is undertaken to ensure that those conditions are met. Once a firearm user's license is issued, there are conditions that are stipulated in the license that has to be adhered to by every holder of a firearm. If that holder is in breach of any of these principles, there are corrective and punitive measures to be taken for that. Right. So oftentimes members of the public may be aware of certain conditions that may not be to the knowledge of the RGPF for actions to be taken. If you are aware of conditions where persons who are the holders of a firearm user's license, they are not in compliance with it, by all means report it.
All right. Mr. McIntyre, we get to that time of the morning. Closing comments, of course, interesting conversation this morning. We started off the conversation with, of course, youth violence. We spoke about the parenting aspect. We spoke about, police procedure and so forth. All fruitful information this morning. Anything in closing before we take care?
Yeah, I wish to, again, express support to members of the RGPF. We commend you for the sterling job and responsibility that you have in protecting our nation. It's not the easiest of task and responsibility. I would like to make an appeal to our nation to respect and support our RGPF. They are for the protection of life and property, and they are entrusted with that kind of responsibility, which is not one that is often undertaken by everyone. And therefore, policing and keeping Grenada safe, whether it as a result of criminal activities committed by individuals who are undesired in some or considered in some circumstance, it takes all of us, citizens of Grenada, to protect this dear beloved country of ours, from parents to other custodians of institutions. Law enforcement is everybody's business. The police officers are the entrusted, uniformed, legal custodians for law enforcement. But ensuring that our society is safe is a responsibility of every one of us. If something feels unsafe, look unsafe, smell unsafe, it may just be unsafe. The people who are responsible for ensuring and maintaining your safety are members of the RGPF. Give them your support and encourage them in what they do. They are subject to mistakes as anyone else, but under every circumstance, the underlying issue is to ensure that Grenada is a safe place for everyone.
All right. I want to thank you once again, Mr. McIntyre, for sharing information this morning. As I was see you on Monday. Yes. That's so true. Folks, that's how we take a wrap for this edition of To The Point. Thanks all who contributed to today's program. Thank you so much. Have yourself a good day, folks. That's what we say goodbye.